This is We Bleed Orange and Black, the podcast for Halloween and horror lovers. Join us as we interview creators, discuss our favorite horror, and share original spooky stories. I'm Jeff C. Carter, and this week we're talking with Dori Lumpkin about their new book, ANTENORA. Dori Lumpkin is a queer writer from South Alabama. Their work has appeared in dozens of anthologies and magazines, including Susurrus, Marrow Magazine, and The Deeps. They are currently pursuing their master's in English with a focus in fiction writing from the University of South Alabama. When not writing, Dori can be found reading, talking too much about queer erotic horror, or trying to stare past Lilo, their cat who sleeps on the laptop. Welcome to the show, Dori.
Hi, glad to be here.
I have an icebreaker question for you.
Okay.
Are you going to Halloween Horror Nights this year?
I am going twice this year. I'm actually going this weekend, and then I'm going again in October.
Wow, twice.
Yeah.
Have you ever gone
It's only
twice before?
We went last year. It's only a 7-hour drive, which I say like only, but it's not too bad of a drive to get down there. So we're actually, my partner and I are Universal annual pass holders. So we try to get down there as much as we can, and I'm so very excited.
Do you do like front of the line VIP Express? How do you roll?
No, we just go straight in. We're going with a friend who has never been this upcoming weekend. So we're trying to do like as classic as it can be, like get there at 6:30, see the opening ceremony, and just do whatever we want. And then the second time we go, we're going with some more experienced friends. So we're doing like Scream early and getting in line super, super early and as much as we can.
It is fun to bring along a civilian who's never done it and to show them the ropes and then tell, or more aptly, bore them with stories about, oh, this ride used to be this, and it used to be Jurassic Park in the dark, and then this zone was The Purge one year, and...
Oh yeah, I'm so excited. This is the time of year where I thrive because it's like horror night season, and of course all of the, like, it's the time where you can acceptably say, I spend all my time watching horror movies, even though you spend the rest of the year doing that anyway. So Horror Nights is like something I could talk about for hours and hours.
I'm right there with you. What are some of your favorite mazes?
We haven't actually done that many because we only went for the first time last year. But I will say that I am a huge, huge fan of any of the Universal Classic Monsters. So every year I am always like primed and ready for whichever house that's going to be. And I feel like last year the set dressing for the Unmasked house was especially fantastic. I love Dracula, and also the Invisible Man got a lot of love last year, and I just think he's so fun. He's so special. I'm still waiting on one day there'll be a creature house. I can keep dreaming.
One day,
because he's my absolute favorite. But
my grand theory is that as the climate gets warmer every year, Halloween will have to shift to more tropical themes, and I think Creature from the Black Lagoon is going to be the big player. That will be their moment, because Universal Horror Nights is going to have to like bring in water slides and stuff just so you can survive the scorching heat of October.
Yeah, listen, they have a swamp scare zone this year, so...
I mean, that's in Florida, so do they just back it up into a swamp? Like an actual crocodile, alligator-filled swamp?
Yeah, sourcing their fan boats from locals.
Right. Dori, I noticed in your extended bio that you mentioned not only your theater background, but also a bit of a film industry background.
So I grew up in the film industry. My dad's a producer. I have been on movie sets since I was in the womb. It only felt natural for me to do something. I like to say that it's not theater related anymore, but it's storytelling related, because my whole entire childhood was, how do we tell the best story or the best version of this story? Watching it come together and seeing all of the work that goes into making a movie or putting on a show or something like that, and seeing all the love that people pour into that form of storytelling and helping other people's stories get told. I always wanted more of a hands directly on the actual making of the story. So writing came kind of naturally to me because of that.
What flavor of production? Was it developmental? Was it practical on set?
I have worked so many different jobs. I was in the camera department for a while. I was in the art department for a while. I was just following him around and absorbing as much information as I could.
What did you do in the theater?
I was actually an actor. Which feels crazy to me now, like looking at it in retrospect, because I always, like I said, love of storytelling, wanting to be the one that tells the story. I felt for a while like acting was the best way that I could do that. And I approach writing the same way, is like looking at what's on the page and figuring out how I can make the character come to life. That was always so much fun to me until I realized that I could be the one directly creating the character as opposed to just bringing them to life.
How'd that get all mixed up with horror?
My journey with writing horror actually didn't start too long ago, but I've always loved creepy, sort of spooky. I had a conversation with my dad the other day, actually. When I was very young, he produced the movie Frankenfish, which is a creature horror about swamp, awful, disgusting fish. And he was like, when you were like, I was 2 or 3, I don't remember how old exactly, but I came to set, and it was the day that they were doing this big prosthetic where a man gets the back of his head shot out. And as a very young child, I got to see the behind the scenes of all that happen. And he sat back when he was telling me this and was like, I feel like that explains a lot about you today. But when it comes to writing horror, I always felt a little bit more connected to it from a queer perspective, because I feel like there is so much about the world that sucks extra hard right now that it becomes really easy to escape in things that are definitely safe, but you still get that adrenaline rush from, which is why I like haunted houses and Halloween Horror Nights so much, because I don't do roller coasters, but I love putting myself in that situation, knowing that I am going to be scared, but knowing that I am still going to be safe at the end of the day from it. And I can't say that about the rest of the world. So that's where it lives for me.
Safety aside, do you feel drawn to confront these issues that are existential?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a place to play in a way and like explore situations that you can't necessarily. I'm sure you understand a lot about that, having read ANTENORA recently, but just exploring the ideas of queerness and things like that, where, for example, I'm working on my thesis right now for grad school, which is about vampires in the 80s. And I said in my prospectus for it that I wanted to write a story where the queerness was vampirism and the fact that they were gay didn't matter.
So I went to film school in the 90s, and we definitely studied horror films. I was all about unpacking vampirism as metaphor for all these different things. Back then, it was like AIDS, blood, and vampires,
Yes.
fear. So by all means, hit me with it. I mean, spoilers for your thesis. You don't have to defend it here, but I am fascinated. I'm all ears. Anything you'd care to share, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, so it's like a lesbian coming of age retelling of the movie The Lost Boys, which very much situated in the queer and punk communities of California of 1986-ish. Fears of the 80s, AIDS, and Reagan, and everything going on, and a young girl confronting with her last summer before she goes to college and realizing that she hates her life, and then meeting a group of vampires that she thinks will change it for the better.
So this is a work in progress?
Yes, I should be defending it in hopefully March.
Unless you have a touch of the vampire yourself, I hope you don't mind me noticing, but you are a younger person. Why Lost Boys? Why 80s? Why Reagan era?
It's my favorite era of horror. It's my favorite era of music. It's my favorite era of pretty much everything. And I feel like when using vampirism as a metaphor, we talked about like all of the connections between those two, it made the most sense. And also I feel like the coming of age tale doesn't necessarily work set in the modern day, because what it means to come of age now in America, the like stereotypical idea of what it is very 70s, 80s, 90s.
Yes, but you came of age in modern America.
Right, but if I want to tell that kind of story, then I'm looking at the past.
Right. I'm fascinated because there's been a boom in nostalgia. There's been a backlash against nostalgia. There has been some gnashing of teeth involved with like kids these days, coming of age, rites of passage, infantilization, etc., etc., etc. In your lived experience, what does it mean to come of age in modern America, and how does that contrast with the 80s?
There's a lot more, I don't want to say safety necessarily now. I will say it feels like there's a lot less freedom and a lot more exposure.
Mm.
So now we're having more of a coming of age on the internet, which is a very, very different thing from coming of age in a community. And so while the same things are happening, like going through puberty, just discovering your queer identity, meeting vampires, whatever it is happening in a very, very different context because it can be happening internationally as opposed to just in someone's small town.
Yeah.
Which makes us feel like disconnected and more connected at the same time.
I think we need an hour to just drill down into this. I think you're right. I think you definitely identified the problems and the differences. Right now, I'm writing something that's set in the 90s, and it feels a bit nostalgic, but I am specifically making an homage to my favorite slashers of the 80s and 90s. But it is weird because there's that whole cell phone issue, which I don't put too much stock in. I don't feel the need to write a period piece just because, it's too hard to plot something when people have cell phones. It's like, no, it's not. Cell phones are incredible for getting simultaneous information to characters and getting them to coordinate. Much harder when you're writing in the 80s and 90s. Wait, how would character A know the character B across town needs this or needs to get picked up? There's no Uber, like, crap. Kids on bikes can only travel so far.
Yeah.
But now, of course, my brain is furiously scrabbling at the idea of what would a modern take on coming of age with vampires look like in the age of the internet.
Yeah.
You've got glamour, which is a thing that vampires do to seduce their victims. And then you have social media, which is basically all glamour. So I think there's something there you could maybe work on. In Antenora, like, you created a bubble of, let's throw to Antenora. I think we can fold these two things together.
Okay.
Dori, will you please read the back of the book summary for Antenora?
Yes, I will. Antenora, Dante's ninth circle of hell, reserved for traitors to their country. What really happened to Nora Willett? The religious community of Bethel, Alabama can't agree on the truth. They always said she was trouble. Later, they said she was possessed. Maybe she lost her mind, killing 3 people and injuring many others. In a part confessional, part plea for Nora to come home, Nora's childhood friend Abigail Barnes tells of another girl's gruesome 18th birthday, of the time Nora may have fully revived a snake, of the intimacy of their private encounters at the lakeside, of Nora's deliverance ceremony. Where, Abigail wonders, is Nora now? In this tender and horrific debut, religious dogmatism sniffs out 2 girls whose innocent affections threaten an entire town and way of life, making one a traitor to a homeland in which only Abigail and Nora know the bittersweet truth. A homeland in which Nora can only say, "There's a snake speaking to me, Abby girl."
This story is set in is it a fictional town, Bethel?
Technically it exists, but it's one of those towns where no one lives. A place, but it doesn't really exist.
So in a quasi-fictional town of Bethel, Alabama, it seems almost like a throwback in that these people are living in a religious commune and their attitudes are pretty antiquated. However, you have also recreated this modern sense of all eyes on the kids at all times, no privacy, strict control of everything they do. Is this your coming of age in modern America story?
Yes and no. I very deliberately did not say when Antenora takes place because while I was writing it, I could not decide if I wanted it to be a period piece or not, but also because there are so many places in rural Alabama, specifically North Alabama for Antenora, that are so disconnected like that have both at the same time for whatever reason. I didn't grow up in a place like that, but I'm very aware of them because of the South being what it is.
Is Bethel and the Pentecostal snake handling church sort of a heightened version of what you have observed or experienced or witnessed?
I grew up Methodist, And I was not privy to any of this until a couple of years ago. I think that the greater populace kind of became more aware of these like faith testing ideas with Donald Ray Pollock's The Devil All the Time and the spiders in that book and movie. But snake handling has been around since the 40s and has been something that has fascinated me with the sections of Appalachian Christianity.
Abigail is the narrator. Her friend is Nora. They are both struggling to keep sweet and prove their faith inside the context of this Pentecostal church that's very regressive, very oppressive, repressive even. What made you settle on this pairing?
Both Abigail and Nora represent the two sides of myself with how I feel about the South and how I feel about growing up in the South. Because we have Nora, who very much wants out, very much sees it for what it is, and has to imagine that everything else anywhere else is better than where she is, and is willing to defy and defy and defy until it puts her own self at risk. And then we have Abigail, who is starting to see it for what it is, but still recognizes that it's her home. People who have had friends or connections with people who are trying to deconstruct certain types of Christianity. And so it was the combination of them both being me, essentially, but also looking at that type of friendship and seeing someone who is so far, not beyond help, but so far behind you and where you are in your deconstructive journey and not knowing what you can do to help, but also knowing what's best for yourself and how you have to proceed without them or with them.
Do you think that it would have been a simpler story of rebellion if it was all just go, Nora rules the end, as opposed to Abigail's more mature outlook? You know, she's the one looking back, and she's the one not only picking up the pieces, but putting things back together. She has not rejected her home per se. She has grown into it.
There's a reason that I chose Abigail's point of view instead of Nora's. I don't think the book would have been as interesting if I had written it from Nora's point of view, and it would have been too easy because everyone wants to agree with Nora. You can just be like, yeah, like you said, yeah, go Nora, go. Burn it all down, queen, get what you want. Whereas from Abigail's point of view, there's that sympathy for the narrator where you're like, oh, honey, we know what's going on and we're just waiting for you to figure it out too.
Is this a confession? Is this a diary, a story? Because it has the feel of the epistolary format, but there's no evidence that this has ever been written down or even shared publicly or to another person.
I never officially decided who Abby was talking to. Even in the final round of edits, I was editing down because my editor, Amanda, went through and was like, you have to fix some of these references directly to the reader if you're never going to decide who the reader is, which fair. So there are a bunch of different versions of the story and ways that you can read it to me. I think that to a degree, it's Abigail telling the story to herself. There was a version of it for a while that it was Abigail telling it to Nora's father. There was a version of it for a while where it was a diary. Really, for me, is the kind of thing where it's like, who do you see yourself as to Abigail? As someone that she would confide in or as someone who would use the information against her?
Interesting. Ultimately, you are telling the story to the reader. Do you tend to write from first person?
I love first person point of view, but I'll say that I tend to write very, very close. So the big project that I'm working on right now that's not my thesis is a dual point of view haunted house book. And I've been bouncing back and forth in between dual third person POV. And no matter what, it is just very, very close. I love to have a lot of personality in my narrators, whether it's first or third person.
Do you think that is an outgrowth of acting and being in theater?
Yes. Yeah, without question. Character first, always. And if there is a large personality telling the story, that's where your eyes are going to go.
All the better. Yeah. Can you tell me a bit about the cover art?
Yeah. Rachel Kelly Design was the one who did the cover art. Creature, the publisher, has all of these spines that go down on the side of every one of their books, and she's the one who designed that as well. And we had a bunch of different options for the cover art, and this is the one that spoke to my soul the best, because the line in the book is, there's a snake speaking to me. Abby girl. For obvious reasons, there is a snake speaking to a girl on the cover that might be Nora, might not be Nora. What was important to me was the snake. And when I was sending in my massive Pinterest board of design ideas, it was all vintage posters that were created and designed to prevent sin from happening in the church. And there's this billboard near Birmingham, Alabama, that is a vintage devil art. And it just says in big letters, "Go to church or the devil will get you."
Nice.
And that is one of my absolute favorite things. Every time I go up to Birmingham, I have to point it out. I used to have a sticker of it on my laptop. And so when I was like, this is the cover for my book, just trust me, that's where the design came from.
Awesome. So what are you working on next?
My thesis is at the forefront of my mind, my Lost Boys Girls. But I mentioned my haunted house book, which is, fingers crossed, come hell or high water, going to be a short novel length. I'm aiming for 45,000 words for that one. So we'll see what actually happens. I've been pitching it as The Haunting of Hill House meets I Saw the TV Glow. It's like failing queer relationship goes back to one girl's hometown to clear out the estate of her deceased mother. And then shit gets awful.
Are there certain tropes or horror subgenres that you want to take a crack at, or do the ideas just arise based on character? I heard a rumor that you love the creature from the Black Lagoon.
I do. I love monsters. I want to write more monsters. I feel like the vampirism is a gateway drug because it's easy to write vampires because they're adjacent to human, but I want to get even weirder with it. I just haven't been able to find that story yet because right now it's all psychological and sad for me right now, which I think is because I'm in grad school.
As soon as you get out, it'll be all about bills.
Yeah, as soon as I get out, it's
Right.
going to get gross and swampy and huge.
Yeah, fantastic. Where can our listeners find you online?
My handle for almost every social media platform is at Whimsy Queen. It's one of those things that stuck with me since I was like 14 years old. And because it is so universal on every platform, I will not change it.
Yeah, you got a brand. Stick with it.
Yeah, right? I'm probably most active on Twitter, but I'm trying to be more active on Instagram. But I'm all over the place. I'm a very easy to find person.
Excellent. Dori, thanks for hanging out.
Thanks so much for having me. I really had a fun time.
Please subscribe and follow. Links are in the show notes. You can find me at jeffccarter.com and hit the link to pick up my collection, We Bleed Orange and Black, 31 fun-sized tales for Halloween. Until next time, stay spooktacular.